So, welcome to the final part of the Talking Sports with Dan and Hayes show. Part 4 of 4, going through the 2022 NCAA tournament bracket with our picks, some insight for those listeners who are having trouble or can't decide between the tough matchups. We're on the Midwest region now, so let's get right into it. The first game we've got here, the 1 seed Kansas, 28-6, playing the winner of Texas Southern, Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Do we need to just pencil Kansas in, or should we make a little bit of a hesitation here and think about this a little more, Dan?
No, we can pick Kansas and keep moving on.
Who do you like in that Texas Southern, Texas A&M Corpus Christi game, though?
Neither of them.
Well, one has to win.
Texas Southern, I don't know.
I picked Texas Southern as well. I mean, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, arguably the worst team in the entire tournament. Kind of surprised a lot of people coming out of their conference. There's not a lot to say here. I mean, they're going to run into the buzzsaw most likely with Kansas. Kansas isn't one of those teams usually when they're a high seed that loses early, especially a 1 seed obviously, but they usually take care of business. I expect this to be a 20-point game plus. Not really anything that you should watch more than the first 5 minutes of. So let's move on to the second game, shall we? San Diego State 23-8, the 8 seed out of the Mountain West, gets Creighton 22-11, the 9 seed. This is a trap game, in my opinion. I think this is going to be one of those games that could go either way. It really depends on how well San Diego State plays. Their defense is going to be good. Best defense in the country in the tournament, giving up only 57.7 points per game. Very good defense, but not scoring a lot, only scoring 65 a game. So if Creighton can get past their shooting woes, 31% beyond the arc, and get into the 60s, I think that Creighton wins this game. They've absolutely shown that they can beat anyone in the country, throughout the season. But again, another one of those teams, you run into where they just have these really low lows for no reason.
I think San Diego State's a better team on paper. I'm picking Creighton. I just really like how they're coached. I like how they play. Like you said, they can be inconsistent at times, but I think in a one-game situation, neutral site, I'm going to go Creighton in this one. If San Diego State had Steve Fisher as their coach, they'd probably win this game and maybe even knock off Kansas. He's just a postseason coach, but they don't, so I'm going with Creighton in this one.
Yeah, it is very challenging to pick those defensive-minded teams in the tournament. Usually offense is king when it comes to this. Scoring 65 points a game, that is very challenging. If they don't get to that number, then I really have a hard time picking them to win. I have Creighton as well in this one.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next game, we've got arguably the hottest team in the country on the 5 line. That's Iowa, 26-9 out of the Big Ten, playing Richmond out of the Atlantic 10. A surprise conference champion right there, beating... holy shit, who did they beat? I'll crop this out. Wow.
Richmond beat Dayton.
No, they didn't.
Yes, it did.
Dayton's not in.
Or not Dayton, Davidson.
That's why I was going to say Dayton, too. We're going to crop that. That's okay. We've got like 20 seconds of garbage here. But anyway, moving on to the next game, we've got the 5 line, arguably the hottest team in the country, Iowa, 26-9 out of the Big Ten, playing Richmond, surprise conference champion out of the A10, beating Davidson, 23-12 at the 12 seed. Do you think that Iowa continues that hot streak, or do you think Richmond puts an end to it?
No, I think Iowa continues their hot streak at least for one game. Richmond, it's hard to believe. I think the last time they qualified for the NCAA tournament was like 2010 or 2011, right around there. It seems like they're a team that's consistently competitive, but Iowa's too good. They have too much talent. They're a hot team. They're battle-tested in the Big Ten. You can make a case they were right there with Wisconsin and Illinois throughout the regular season and could have easily have won the Big Ten. So I like Iowa in this one. I just think they have way too much talent.
Yeah, I agree completely. I've got Iowa in this one as well. It isn't surprising to see Iowa go over 100 points in a game. I don't think they do that here, but averaging 84 points per game, if they get into the high 70s, even into the 70s, I think they stand a really good chance to win this game. They shoot the ball really well. They've got bigs on the inside. Just an all-around team. Probably one of the most complete teams heading into the tournament in terms of just having balance between offense, defense, bigs, and guards, and then obviously playing well as a unit. So I think that's definitely one to watch. This game, along with the next game, which is the four-line Providence, 25-5, playing the 13 seed South Dakota State, 30-4 out of the Summit League. Another one of those 30-win teams. Is this a trap game for Providence, do you think, or do you think Providence finds a way to get past South Dakota State?
Yeah, this is definitely a trap game for Providence. I really like Providence coming in to just overall this tournament. I wasn't high on them as some who thought they could be a dark horse Final Four team. But I thought Providence was a team that could maybe win a couple games in the tournament. They're a well-coached team who really just play like a team. They don't have one superstar type player. But South Dakota State is one of the best mid-majors this season. They're a team who can really score the ball, averaging 86.7 points in the country. That's only behind Gonzaga this season. Granted, I know that's who they're playing as well, partly plays into that, but they just have a lot of talent. They can shoot the ball from three.
Yeah, they're shooting 45% from three, which is best in the country by a sizable margin.
And they do have an inside presence too, so I think this is a pretty well-balanced team. Their head coach, if they have a good run here, could really maybe potentially get a nice high major job. So I think that never hurts the motivation too from a coaching perspective. So
yeah, I think who do you have in this one?
I have South Dakota State winning, and I have them actually. Probably, I'm leaning towards picking them to beat Iowa.
Yeah, that from a Providence perspective, I mean Providence 25-5. You sit there looking at a close to Power 5 conference, you're like, wow, that's a fantastic season, right? I think they got the worst draw in this tournament. I mean, you're seeing a team that no one wants to play. The one thing I do like that Providence has going for them is they are fantastic in the close game scenarios at pulling it off. I mean, if you look at it, they score 71.8 points per game, and they give up 67 points per game. That is a scary close number of a difference of only like 4.8, yet they're 25-5, which just shows, how well they play down the stretch in tight matchups. So I think if this game is close down the stretch, I'm giving the edge to Providence to pull off the upset. I actually think Providence may not even be favored in this game. So, mentioned pulling the upset off, but in a close matchup, I think Providence can pull it off. I just don't think that they have enough firepower to overcome South Dakota State's hot shooting. I mean, if South Dakota State has an average day and shoots 45% from three, this game isn't going to be close. They're going to win by double digits. So I have South Dakota State in this one as well. And that may set up, the biggest fireworks of all in the entire tournament with Iowa playing South Dakota State. I would not be surprised if both teams go over 100 in that game.
Who would you pick in that game?
Who did I pick in which game? Iowa, Richmond?
No, who would you pick if it's Iowa versus South Dakota
I would
State?
pick Iowa just because their defense is a little bit better than South Dakota State's. Again, they're a little more battle-tested, but I do like South Dakota State as an overall team. I just think that Iowa's got a better presence inside. South Dakota State did get bullied a little bit by North Dakota State in their conference tournament on the inside, by some tall guards. So I think that really could play a part. I think that's where Providence needs to take advantage, right, is that size advantage in the guard play. If they can get to the rim a lot and cause foul trouble for South Dakota State, I think they can win this game.
Yeah, South Dakota's going to be a fun team to watch. I think they have the firepower to win a couple games, but, again, they're playing against some tough competition. The teams, Providence got a bad draw, but South Dakota State also didn't get an easy team either.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on to the next team, next matchup, we've got the 6th seed LSU at 22-11. Kind of a quiet season, not really talked about a lot. Went under the radar. 6th seed, in my opinion, feels a little generous, but they're playing in a tough conference, SEC as well. They play the 11 seed Iowa State, 20-12. Another team that you really didn't hear a lot about in the Big 12. You've got the two kind of, I don't want to say no name, kind of middle of the road schools from those two Power Fives playing each other, but This game, this is going to be an interesting matchup. I think LSU has the advantage right off the bat. I mean, they rebound the ball a little bit better, score more points per game, but both teams have kind of had their ups and downs this season.
Yeah, I mean, a couple storylines here to watch in this game. LSU obviously just fired their head coach, Will Wade, right before the tournament. That's going to be something to watch. How do they handle that? How do they adjust to that? And then Iowa State is a team that only won 2 games last year, lost its top 5 scorers after the season, which they probably weren't that good anyways if you only won 2 games. But they lost them to either transfer or pro ball. So TJ Otterberger comes in, brings a whole bunch of new guys, and they've been pretty competitive. The Big 12 was a difficult conference. Obviously, Iowa State wasn't one of those top 3 or so teams in the conference, but they were competitive. They got into the tournament, and I'm picking up Iowa State in this game. LSU with the coaching change kind of concerns me just because they don't have that consistency going into the tournament.
Yeah, they were a team that I watched a little bit off and on, and they're another one of those teams that relies a little bit on chaos like Houston and Memphis do. So, they're super aggressive on defense and like to create a lot of turnovers and get out and run. And if they can't do that, then they kind of just get stuck in the half court and they really struggle on offense.
Yeah, I just don't know what we're going to see from them because obviously they're going to run the same stuff because you don't really have much time to change from Will Wade's style to their new interim coaches, but I just don't know what you're going to get from them.
So yeah, I agree. That's a big question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the next matchup in the Midwest region, we've got Wisconsin, the hometown Wisconsin, 24-7 at the 3 line. They get Colgate, the 14 seed, 23-11. Not a lot known about Colgate. They score a lot of points per game, 76.1. They shoot the 3 extremely well at 40%, of the top 3 in the tournament. Wisconsin, on the other hand, does not shoot the 3 well, 31% as a team. It's a classic Wisconsin team, scoring 71 a game and giving up 67 a game. So again, they're used to being in the close games. They Big Ten Conference, once again, one of the most competitive conferences. I mean, who do you like in this one? Do you like Wisconsin, or do you think Colgate has a real chance to upset them?
I mean, I think Colgate can make this game interesting, but I think Wisconsin playing in Milwaukee, it's going to be a home game for them. Wisconsin's going to win this game. I think something to watch, not for this game necessarily, because I think they can get by Colgate without necessarily a fully healthy Johnny Davis. Johnny Davis is a little banged up, and the Badgers do kind of go with how Johnny Davis plays. So if he's banged up and not fully healthy for the second round, and if they win the Sweet 16, the Badgers could have an early exit. I think the bracket sets up nicely for Wisconsin.
Absolutely.
The fact that they're in the Midwest, so they're going to start off in Milwaukee, pretty much home games. And then if they make it to, the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, I don't know which one it is, it's going to be in Chicago. So, again, pretty close to Madison. Going to have a ton of fans. That's going to help. And I think Wisconsin as a team has some talent overall. Brad Davison is going to have to play at a high level. He's got the most experience, 6 years. He can play at a high level, but they need him to. They need someone besides Johnny Davis to step up and help carry them.
Yeah, that's very true. I think this is another one of those games where it comes down to the Wisconsin defense. Can you keep Colgate from, making their 40% average of three-pointers? I think if they do, Wisconsin wins this game easy, but I think Colgate can absolutely keep it close and maybe squeeze out a win here if they shoot the ball well. I actually have Colgate in this one. This is one of my 3-14 upsets. I think with Johnny Davis being banged up, and Wisconsin kind of looking for that second guy to create his own shot like only Davis can, I think Colgate shoots the ball really well and gives Wisconsin an early exit. But I do not have a problem with seeing Wisconsin into the Sweet 16 just because they will play LSU or Iowa State, who I think are two of the weaker 6'11s.
Yeah, I mean, for Wisconsin, we talk about them playing pretty much a home game. That can also be a negative, too, especially because you might not be as focused. So it's going to be interesting. it would be a major upset if they lost in Milwaukee.
I agree.
To Colgate. I think it would be kind of funny, but yeah, Johnny Davis. This team goes with Johnny Davis, and if he's not fully healthy, this team's not going to make it.
The one thing I will say is I picked Colgate, but I'm picking this based on an upset. But if Johnny Davis is going to get probably every shot that he wants, it's just about whether he's in the right mindset, if he's making those shots, and if he's looking to create for himself and everyone else, right? Because Johnny Davis can score 20, 30 points, but if Johnny Davis isn't passing the ball well, and if there's no supporting cast like you mentioned with Brad Davis, and I just find it hard to believe that Wisconsin can win this game scoring 55 points.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely something to watch, and if they do make it far, they could have a tough matchup on their hands come the Sweet 16.
Yep, absolutely. So the next matchup is USC out of the Pac-12, 26-7, the 7 line. They play Miami 23-10, the 10 line out of the ACC. Kind of a quiet season for Miami, not really talked about with all the major popular schools, UNC, Duke, Virginia Tech winning the ACC. They've kind of been a dark horse riding, under the radar. USC, another team riding a little bit under the radar, a little bit underperforming this year. They were ranked very highly. Had a really, really bad game where they barely beat Pacific earlier this season. They never really could get over the hump. They didn't beat Arizona. Didn't really play them super competitive. Beat UCLA once, but again lost the other game and then made an early exit in the Pac-12 tournament. This game I have USC. I don't think it's close. Miami is the worst rebounding team in this tournament by a fair margin. Only 30 rebounds total per game. That indicates to me that they either don't get on the offensive glass very well or they give up a lot of offensive rebounds, where USC is a team that absolutely excels on the rebounding end. So I think this game is solely won on offensive rebounding for USC.
Yeah, I don't really like either of these teams in this matchup. I think USC's kind of been a disappointment this year. I thought they'd be a little better. At times they were throughout the regular season, but I don't like the way they're playing lately. And I'm picking Miami in this. I'm not confident in it, but I'm hoping that Jim Larinaga, the experience he has in postseason play, the fact that USC's kind of underachieved might help Miami. I don't know. It's going to be I think it's kind of a toss-up game, and I'll go with Miami in this one.
Yeah, I had a very hard time getting past the rebounding aspect of this. I mean, when you're the worst rebounding team in the tournament, regardless of what conference you play in, that's just concerning on all levels, especially when you're playing a team that has a good amount of length and really likes to hit the offensive glass hard like USC does and score those tough points inside. As a 7 seed, I think USC is kind of undervalued. I mean, they were ranked fairly high for most of the season. Only 7 losses, and you're putting them all the way down as a 7 line. They kind of fall into that Murray State line. I mean, you've got Michigan State 22-12 at the 7 line, and you've got USC 26-7. And they're all the way down the 7 line. I just disagree with that. I think they should be rated higher, and I think they're going to prove that they need a little bit more respect.
Yeah, I think regardless of who wins this game, I don't have either team winning against Auburn. But USC does have talent, so they would be an interesting team to kind of follow into that second round.
Yeah, I think if USC makes it into the second round, they have a good shot at beating Auburn. I mean, Auburn is another one of those teams, and we can talk about that matchup right now. So Auburn, the number 2 seed in this Midwest region, 27-5 out of the SEC. They get Jacksonville State 21-10, the 15 seed. I don't think we really need to spend more than 5 seconds saying that Auburn's going to win this game. They don't shoot the 3 well, Jacksonville State does, but I really don't think that's going to make a difference here. Auburn is just too athletic. They've got one of the best bigs in the country. I think that Jacksonville State's going to have an absolute monster on their hands trying to get into the lane and score points here. So I'm just looking at that next round matchup.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Auburn in this one. Like you said, they're loaded with talent. Jabari Smith should be their number 1 overall pick in the draft. Walker Kessler has been phenomenal since transferring from North Carolina. played inside, played a little outside, but overall has been a phenomenal big man. And then they got some transfer guards as well. I'm surprised about how much they've struggled from three in SEC play because the Bruce Pearl team always likes to get up and down the court, shoots threes, usually makes a lot of threes. But
yeah, they've
Auburn kind of struggled in the SEC tournament. I'm not worried about that. I think the amount of talent they have, they're well coached. I think they'll be fine come postseason play.
yeah, I've got a little bit of concerns of them at the 2 line. I mean, they just I mean, we've said this 6 times already, but it's another one of those teams where you just get these really random struggles where some of their guard play is just, it's not even bad, it's horrific. Like I've seen a few games where they score 2 points and play 35 minutes. I mean, 1 of 12 shooting, that's just, that isn't going to be acceptable in the tournament if you want to win games, and you can't have that kind of play. And it's, it was against teams like Arkansas and other good teams, in the SEC. So there's a few questions there, definitely. But, as a whole, one of the most complete teams in terms of, like you said,
Yeah.
Jabari, who's an absolute stud, can make shots from all over the court. He's really patient as a freshman. You got Walker Kessler, who's probably going to, he's probably the best big man up there with Illinois' Coffee. But, I mean, I just think Jacksonville State has really no chance to score in the paint here, and I think Auburn dominates that. I don't think they need to make threes to win this game.
No, and I think talking about Auburn, too, I mean, I really like Wendell Green. KD Johnson is a good player as well. But I think one thing in the regular season we saw from Auburn is Jabari Smith sometimes is too nice and he passes the ball more than he should. And part of that's just Bruce Pearl and the way he coaches with playing team basketball. But I think come tournament time now, I think you're going to see Bruce Pearl allowing and telling Jabari Smith to kind of take over more than maybe he did in the regular season because he does have that talent. He's able to knock down shots from anywhere on the court, and it's a phenomenal player, and I think Auburn has a chance to make a nice run in this year's tournament.
Yeah, and Auburn nearly playing a home game here. I mean,
Yeah.
that just adds to it. Jacksonville State not too far away either, but this is one of those teams that, it kind of felt like Auburn was looking ahead a little bit to unfinished business in the tournament from previous years. They made a Final Four run a few years ago and kind of just dropped the ball when they got there. So I think this is a Bruce Pearl coach team where, they may put it on cruise control a little bit towards the end of the season, and that's where you see some of those questionable losses. But, I think come tournament time, like you said, he's going to be ready to release everything he's got, and really make a run here. So
who do you have in the Elite Eight Final Four?
yeah, in the Elite Eight here, well, in the Sweet 16, I've got Iowa playing Kansas. I think that's going to be a very, very tough game. I do like Iowa in that game if it should come to that matchup. I think Kansas has some good players, but those two teams are very similar in my mind. And I think Iowa's just playing a little bit hotter. So I have Iowa in the Elite Eight. I also have Auburn in the Elite Eight, and I think Auburn defeats Iowa.
Oh, wow. I'm kind of surprised you picked Auburn to make it to the Final Four. I thought I have Auburn in the Final Four as well. I have them beating Kansas. I have South Dakota State beating Iowa. But if Iowa does get past South Dakota State, I could definitely see them challenging Kansas for sure. Agreed with what you said on that. So I think Auburn, even though we talked about some of their kind of struggles and problems they've had throughout the season, they do, for a number 2 seed, they have a pretty easy route. I mean, their biggest challenge is going to be Wisconsin.
If they get that far.
Yeah, and part of that problem, too, simply is because Wisconsin Auburn would be in Chicago, but Bruce Pearl, not afraid of big games, and Wisconsin
Got ties to Milwaukee already anyway.
Yeah. With Johnny Davis's health is a big question mark, frankly, because I don't trust anyone else on that team besides Johnny Davis to kind of lead the Badgers. So I think Auburn's got a clear shot to the Elite Eight, and Kansas and Iowa might take one of the other out. So
yeah.
I think Auburn's going to get to the Final Four, and I was going to set up a pretty solid Final Four, at least for my bracket, if we want to get into that. Mine's Gonzaga, UCLA, Arizona, and Auburn in the Final Four.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's an easy pick to put Gonzaga and Arizona all the way through. I mean, they're the most, the two most well-rounded teams, been the most consistent. I really struggle in the East and Midwest bracket. Like I said, I have Baylor. I mean, yeah, you're picking all the number one seeds, but those are just the most consistent teams. UCLA is one of those teams for sure that I would definitely be taking a hard look at because of their experience and they've been there before. I don't like the Kentucky at the two line to make it that far. I just think they've got too many issues shooting the ball, and if it turns into a half court game, they really struggle. The Midwest region, by far and away, the hardest to pick, I think, because Kansas has been, kind of consistent, but they haven't been really convincing, in my
Right.
opinion. And Auburn, in a similar manner, kind of seems like they're on cruise control. And the teams that I'm really circling in that group is Creighton to potentially give Kansas some trouble should they get there. Creighton's another team that we talked about earlier, where they just always are in these close games with really really tough opponents and always come out on top in these big games. So that's one thing to watch for Kansas. And then obviously Iowa, as we know, I'm circling them to potentially get to the Elite Eight. I mean, they're the hottest team in the country right now, no doubt about it. South Dakota State, another team that I could potentially see circling to go to the Elite Eight. I know that's a long run for a mid-major, but them and Iowa are pretty much the same team, just in different conferences. The way you look at it, I mean, very similar teams.
I
So
mean, remember last year, like the teams that made runs. Oregon State is one that just pops out right away, and then UCLA was a low seed who made a run. So it's not with college basketball the way it is today with the transfer portal. There seems to be more balance across, especially the high major teams, and even some balance in the competitive mid majors. That it's I don't think as shocking to see those upsets. I mean, it's always a shock, but I think it wouldn't shock me if South Dakota State wins a couple games. I think they have that talent. It wouldn't shock me if Iowa got to the Elite Eight or Final Four. Even, I hate to say it, Wisconsin, I think, could find its way in at least the Elite Eight. But again, Johnny Davis' health. So, like you said, the Midwest, I think, is the most competitive, most difficult to predict just because there is that talent. USC's got talent. They could challenge Auburn. Creighton could challenge Kansas, like you mentioned. So that side of the bracket, that region's going to be a fun one to watch.
hmm for sure, for sure. And with that, who do you have winning the national championship before we wrap up here the last episode of this
Yeah.
4-part series?
So before I say who I'm picking, I haven't penciled in the right side of the bracket. I think I'll pick Arizona to be in the national title over Auburn. But regardless, I have Gonzaga winning it. I know that sounds kind of cliche because they're the number one overall seed. How often does that happen? It doesn't happen as often as we would think, and everyone's picking Gonzaga. But Gonzaga is eventually going to break through one of these years. I thought it was going to be last year. Now I didn't pick them, but once they got there, I thought it was going to be them, and they just are loaded. Whether that's at the guard position with Timmy, with whole the top recruit
Chet
freshman.
Holmgren.
Yeah, thank you. They just have so much talent that, well, coach, I think they're going to do it. I think it's going to finally be their year. It's not going to be easy because they got a tough region themselves, but I think it's going to be their year to finally win a national title.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it would be an absolute shock if they did not win the national title for them and their fan base. I mean, last year this is pretty much the same team they had 2 years ago. When they
Right.
went to the national title and lost. The only difference is they have the 7'2" Chet Holmgren now who can play a guard outside as well, and he complements Timmy really well inside as a shot blocker. So I just think that that difference right there and that addition is only a plus for their team and only makes them better. So I think that gets them over the hump finally, and I do have Gonzaga winning it all as well, as most people probably will, and as most people usually do with the number one overall seed. But as we've seen in recent past, I think the last number one overall seed to win was probably Louisville when they beat Michigan in was that 2013, 2012.
Yeah, right around there. Yeah, and if it is Gonzaga versus Arizona, Mark Few versus former assistant Tommy Lloyd, who I mentioned was going to take over from Mark Few if he stuck around at Gonzaga, but didn't want to pass up on the Arizona job. I don't see Mark Few losing to his former assistant in that way. I think Gonzaga has more talent. Mark Few is one of the best coaches in college basketball. All those guys pretty much have national championship experience after losing last year. I just think if Gonzaga is ever going to win a national title, it's going to be this year, and they're the best team, and they've showed it throughout the regular season in college basketball.
Agreed. And with that point, we've come to the end of our 4-part series. Thank you for listening into Sports Talk with Dan and Hay. We appreciate your viewership. You can follow us on Instagram. You follow us on Spotify. That's where these podcasts will be posted for the near future until the YouTube channel gets up and running. Follow us on Facebook. Give us a like. Give us the thumbs up. We appreciate the viewership. Thank you very much. Hopefully your brackets all win their pools.